We still could use more you.
More? How's
Let's
this?
get John in there more. I think so. Yes, we're all cozy in our yogi positions.
Great.
Welcome. Here we are. We are live now on my page, and I'm Laura Jane, or LJ, and I'm here with one of my first and favorite and still important teachers, John Childers.
Aw, thank you.
And we're here in the OC, and
We're in the Om land. This is my home studio land. Actually, I like to think of the Om land as the heartland, as the invisible landscape of feelings, thoughts, and beliefs. And what we're really looking to create in yoga, I believe, is this heartland of the soul. We want to cultivate the invisible landscape of compassion, of kindness, of empathy, of telepathy.
now there's a definition of yoga that we're ready for.
I think so, because so much of what we see today is a skeletal, muscular explanation of yoga.
Yeah.
And that's good, especially for people who are trying to do, Cirque du Soleil, gymnastic yoga. It's really helpful that you understand the skeletal body. But if you're looking for the landscape of your soul, of feelings, thoughts, and beliefs, what you may want to focus on is not on a skeletal muscular orientation, but more of a breath or a heartfelt energy orientation. And so what becomes more important is the alignment, or even really what becomes more important is really the twinkle in your eyes and the smile on your face.
Yes. I had a fellow teacher that when we were working registration at a yoga event once together, and it was getting a little busy and it could have been stressful, and she turned to me and said, "This is my chance to see if my yoga is working." And I thought that was so powerful, right? And then I love that what you're bringing up, I think, is that our yoga is really about those moments, right, of awareness and internal ways that we can shift and tune in. So it's not so much about this even formal practice, right, that it's about those moments of awareness and consciousness and being.
I like when you say the tuning in, sort of, when we're able to tune into the invisible world of feelings, thoughts, and beliefs, or we're able to tune into really our feelings, our intuition, our soul.
Right. And that's where I feel like it's so helpful to realize so many things can be yoga, right? Because if that's what we're going for, the landscape of the soul, right?
So when you say that, I think it's really important, because sometimes we talk about things as if they weren't sacred. Like this is like somehow everything is not sacred. And I think that the yoga community could really, there's a little tendency to sort of separate yourself apart from that's waste, or that's what we don't want, or that's last time we used the word renouncing that, like that's not, somehow God's not there, or the divine presence is somehow not in alcohol or fish or women.
Wow.
Women, remember. So we got to really think about that these moments that we're tuning into are really, for me, they are moments. And she said yoga is everything. And see, I think that's, remember, up until recently, spirituality was not about everything. That was only for the indigenous peoples of the world, like, the Native Americans and the Amazon. Everything was sacred for them. Everything is sacred for them. But in the yoga world, it was, maybe withdraw from your senses and find your enlightenment within, not in the world.
Wow, yeah. So our yoga could actually turn into more like separation
Yes.
than actually union.
Right.
And then I feel like in these times where so many of us are feeling so disconnected, it seems like that is why it's so helpful, at least, for us to get clearer on what we mean by yoga and what we're going for and how we can really be that and bring that, right?
I like that. I like that because certainly for me, I think and like even our society at this time, to find that to find our interconnectedness as an expression of yoga, of enlightenment, of higher consciousness. That my higher consciousness is not me being happy by myself. That's okay. But that's a lonely world. That's really like a world of like a ghost. Think about it. You don't want to be happy by yourself. You don't. You don't. You want to be happy in the context of others, of life. Being happy by yourself is divorced from the web of life. Think about it. Really, when you're happy, you're like a quiet moment in nature. Wow. But that's in nature. That's in context. You're really happy with, like your, deep friends, family. That you really, it's when we share joy that I think we're the happiest. And I think that the yoga community sometimes is a little locked in about, I'm getting my head stand down pat, don't get in my way. And like, as if like you could enjoy your headstand by yourself. You can only enjoy your headstand when it's in the context of like, we're sharing learning skills together. And I applaud your success and, well, I'll feel great when you applaud my success. But that only happens if we're working together.
Yeah.
I think the working together is very important.
And it does seem like a new evolution of this whole personal development thing that's been going on the planet, which has maybe been related to the yoga lifestyle of getting so aware of our own consciousness and right. But this could turn into more separation and I feel like it's time for us to realize, like you talked about, the inner being, the inner becoming.
I'm so glad that you've taken this, because I think a lot of the yoga community is still quite happy. I'm getting to be separated in their own, like, I'm happy, why can't you be happy? As opposed to it's a sense of the word self, I think. Like it's this notion, our language, our culture has been trapped in a materialistic orientation from the age of reason, with Descartes, Bacon, and Newton, and all these people, and they had a very separated notion of self. Their self was like, and even the psychology that comes out of this is you're a psychological bubble, you're a skin-encapsulated ego, and I think, therefore I am. Not because you breathe the air that the trees are making. No. It's totally a separate thing. And so this notion of self, like healing yourself or improving yourself, starts to carry with it like there's a separated self. And if we really were to take the deep yoga meditation, union, what is this union? Well, we are one. What is this oneness? What do I mean? That's one self. That's one self of which we are all a spark of. We are all an aspect of. So, like, when I'm going to get myself together, yeah, it's like it's humorous. Like somehow you've already separated yourself from me, as if you can get yourself together without the trees, the plants, the fish, the mercury, or any of it. Yeah, see it. You should see it. It's like, whoa. So really, I think when we have this interbeing sense of self, this interbecoming sense of self, this expanded sense of self, that you are not a skin-encapsulated ego, that you are dependent upon your relationships with others, that you are inseparable from the air, you are the water. So all this is coming through you. So my sense of self really needs to be is an aspect of the whole. And then we see ourselves, instead of trying to get my part together, I want to get my part in the whole. I want to be part of the whole. And this interbeing I think it was selfless service too. We talk about selfless service. That implies that you actually had a separated self in which you could then serve others. If you actually feel yourself as inseparable from everything, then it wouldn't be selfless service. It's just be service. It's the only sort of laugh. If I am truly part of the divine oneness, helping you could never be selfless service because you are, therefore I am. I am helping you, which is helping me. We got to see it like that. And then we also would not be judgmental or judgmental. Like, how come you can't get yourself together? Come on. That's a lack of imagination. That's a lack of empathy. And probably even a lack of compassion. Ooh, come on, get it together. Oh, your mother died when you were young. Oh, yeah, your brother committed suicide. I get it. I get it. That if I was in your shoes, I probably would have, behaved the same way. A true selfless service in this concept, I think, will become an evolution of humanity as a whole.
Yeah, and I feel like I just got made aware of this term, the Maharishi effect. Are you aware of that description of, I guess he was one of the people talking about his awareness that when we meditate, how much it's affecting everything around us, right? And he was the one, I think, who got people together to purposely meditate and see how that would affect communities and even see if crime would go down.
Absolutely.
Things like that, right? So for me too, though, that was like a new awareness, like, because I've been in this conversation about doing our tuning for ourselves and the team. I like calling it the team. I think I got that from Eric Shipman. But to just even bring that awareness of the interbeing of when we're using these practices, that we can be more aware how it is a way that we can be helping the whole.
I like that team concept because that's, again, it's sort of like my happiness can't be separated from my team.
Yeah.
And who is your team? It could be your family, it could be your co-workers, it could be your students, it could be your neighbors. You're not living by yourself. Who do you see during the day? Who's on your team? Everybody on the 405 freeway.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I think you'll appreciate this. I think one of the last times I saw Eric Shipman over the last few years, he was talking about maybe one of the best practices of yoga is going out there and looking at every single person and saying to yourself, brother, sister, brother, really.
Another aspect of the interbeing.
Yeah.
And I think, I like the response of Satish Kumar, and he wrote a book called "You Are, Therefore I Am."
Yeah.
In other words, if you don't exist, I'm not going to exist either. So you walk around saying, everybody is family. Sister, brother, uncle, grandpa. Hey, Grandpa, can you imagine if we had a world in which we treated everybody like family?
Yeah. I've called it like namaste in action.
Namaste.
Right? Yeah.
Any questions from the audience?
We do have one live audience member here.
When you breathe in and you breathe out, and it's referred to as waste, why don't you discuss that a bit?
Ooh.
Yeah, I don't like the imagery of waste, and sometimes the people in the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, they talk about waste, and somehow like, you know, consciousness is separate from matter, so there's no real consciousness in matter. I don't know about that. I think consciousness is primary and matter is secondary, so consciousness is in all matter. But I think this notion of like, it's waste is almost like, I was even thinking about in terms of like fat, you know, like somehow we're going to burn fat, like somehow that's bad, and like my exhalations is, you know, my eliminations, the defecation, that's waste. Now this is just, you know, again, this is just part of the cycling, you know. Your exhalation actually is food for the trees. Your defecation is actually food for the microbes. And your fat, it's fuel for your love. I think that somehow we want to, like, I don't think that it helps us when we say this is bad. And then all of a sudden I got to get rid of this waste. As opposed to, oh, this is stored love. I have to express.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, all of it. How, that's bad. That's no good anymore. Throw that away. That's garbage. I like to think, garbage? Those are atoms. They're valuable. They're made of metal. I don't know. They're good. I don't see anything as like nothing. They're. As soon as I was going to say there's no waste, the next thing really was is people. You know, people are not expendable, and you can just somehow throw them under the bus.
Yeah.
Like somehow, oh, you know, you don't really qualify as a human being in our society, so therefore we rationalize how we can treat you in less than a humane fashion. And of course, you know, people talk really about, you know, how society treats its animals is a good indication of how it's going to treat its people. And again, it's this notion of somehow my exhalation doesn't have consciousness, but then it's like the animals don't have consciousness. So somehow you can somehow treat, you know, dogs for experiments. I mean, it's unconscionable. And then factory farming, it's like we have prisons for animals, and then somehow we have people who are like animals, and therefore we can, like, you know, have prisons for animal-like people. Yeah. And you hear this kind of language coming from our leadership even. And of course, there is no interbecoming if people are sort of not really people, they're sort of subgenres of existence. The real great interbeing for me is, I like the Charles Eisenstein who says, you know, humanity will evolve and join the tribe of all life on earth.
Whoa.
Not only just the tribe of humanity, but of all life on earth. So that the dogs, the plants, and even the metals are all treated with reverence and consciousness. That's the real yoga revolution.
And you know, I feel like some of what you're describing reminds me of what we see with judgment. And I at some point realized that was a big piece of the yoga, the therapy of yoga, is to bring in the non-judgment as much as possible, right? And it feels like this is related to our relationship with judgment and how that can play out in so many ways. I don't know, do you feel like you have anything you want to say about That whole
I
thing.
was thinking a lot about that
Yeah.
because in the quantum physics, they say that the observer affects the observed.
Mm.
Now, what this means is really important because up until now, the notion is that you can passively and objectively detach yourself
Mm-hmm.
and observe it from a safe distance.
Yeah. As if.
As if I was not
Mm.
there feeling it or experiencing it or influencing it. So, so we now know
Yeah.
that our observations affect the plants. I mean, they see it. They got it in school. Now they see it in school.
Yeah.
Here's a plant, say, reinforcing good things. Here's a plant, demean the plant, belittle the plant, and shame the plant. And they actually show, and the students say, wow, these leaves look so withered. These leaves look better. And they get same water, same sunlight. People are, of course, the same way.
Wow.
So, if we no longer can detach ourselves, we can't detach ourselves and passively, objectively observe other people, even plants, or even electrons. Even electrons feel our presence, right? So therefore, when I observe myself without judgment, I start to think to myself, can I really pull myself out of this? Can I really, because they say that I can't passively and objectively observe nature. So maybe I can't even passively and objectively observe myself.
Of course.
So maybe instead of saying judgment,
Uh,
instead of saying judgment, maybe no judgment, observe yourself, self-observation without judgment. How about self-observation with kindness and awareness? That with compassion, with intention, so that I think that more maybe it's not just enough to
yeah.
be. See, we think we can be neutral.
Yeah.
I don't think maybe we can't be.
Yes.
That the science is
Yeah.
telling us we can't be neutral.
Wow.
So therefore, maybe we have to we actually have to be proactive.
Yes.
Blessings. I can't just sort of look at you and be detached. That almost nullifies your existence.
Wow.
Yeah. So now, when I look at you, I have to look at you, as Shipman would say, oh, you're a spark of my team. Oh, I recognize you. And I send love and power and creativity to you. And so instead of being, I'm just being objective. You can't be objective.
Yeah.
And someone says, what was it? There's a famous quote by somebody that says, you can't be passive on a moving train. You know, you this notion that that somehow you can pull yourself out. So I think that the waste, like somehow that there's something in nature is not intended or good or useful or upcycled or spiraling into something else. That's always going to be there, and that when we observe each other, that we really need to understand that we can't be detached. You know, I'm not part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are a part of that. So, and that's the hardest part for us, especially for educated, well-meaning people in the OC. I'm not a racist. I'm not in favor of war. Does that mean that you don't have any responsibility for that?
And see, I think ultimately we are we are all participating in it, and so on a crazy level, you know, it's certainly it's closer to ourselves physically, but on some ultimate level, we are participating in the death economy. Even though I know I don't. Well, yeah, you do. You live in a country that's like a giant military war machine,
Yeah, right.
and you got to come to you got to come to grips with that. And the best way to come to grips with that, watch this, because you're not detached. So, do like the Maharishi effect. You practice sending forth the meditations, the intentions, the prayers for peace, health, compassion. You bring that you. I'm not a racist. Well, but that's again. That's you're detached. I'm sending forth the vibration of unity and understanding, of diversity, of unity in diversity, and that we are proactive, that we're not just a detached observer from our world, and that our enlightenment and our personal growth actually influences those around us and the web of life. It's a new world.
Yeah,
It's a new world.
owning it on all levels.
And so that's really hard.
Right.
That's really hard.
Yeah.
Like I have to own Trump. I have to own. That's part of me. And now in the sense of interbeing, in the sense of interbeing, this is my favorite little bit here for everybody who's feeling like, you know, you mentioned Maharishi, it reminded me of Ram Dass in the sense that he used to, during the Vietnamese War, every day he would say prayers to Caspar Weinberger. Well, you don't remember who he is unless you're like really old, but he was like as Secretary of Defense in the warmongering for the Vietnamese War. And he says, every day I wish Caspar Weinberger that he finds peace in his heart. And every day I practice wishing Trump. My latest thing is I want to send him a peach. Yeah. I want him to have a peachy day.
Yes, right?
And if he doesn't have a peachy day, I really would like to see him impeached.
That's a good one. That's a yoga joke, kind of.
It's a yoga joke kind of. But
But
see,
it's the truth.
but see, in that way, I'm not ever sending him harm. I want.
You're
Come on.
not putting into that.
Yeah,
Right.
I want you to be. I want you to come on. That's why I think it's so cool with the North Korea thing here. If anybody's paying attention, but it's like he actually was happy. He's actually not. He's just a guy who wants to be liked. He just thinks being ugly is the way to do it. He's just got he's got cart before the horse. He should be nice first. And so I think that we can send forth, like last time I was talking about, like, when you feel like, this need to protect yourself against people. Like, I need to protect myself against Trump. Or need to protect myself against these other people. What happened to your inner being? You no longer felt that person. You somehow could detach yourself from that person and say, that's not me. Well, that's me, but I mean, now I can see that as an aspect of me, and so I feel compassion for Trump, who probably, felt abandoned by his mother and therefore has issues with women, and then probably was, abused by his father, and so therefore he is abusive to others in the world. And so, maybe he was abandoned and abused as a child, and so his relationships to women and other people is all messed up because of it. And we should just send him more peaches. I'm serious.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
Because it really makes use of what you described, what we now know with the science of it, even that we are absolutely having an effect with our observations.
Right,
So
right,
we can choose how to use that, right?
right. So we don't want, we don't want, what do you want? I'm going back to the little line. There's more healing power in stating what you're for than what you're against.
Mhm.
Do you want to spend your time with a bunch of circuits plugged into negativity and stuff you don't want? Are you going to unplug those and say, I'm going to plug these into a sense of interbeing, a sense of observing with kindness and compassion, insight and awareness?
It's like what you said, I'm not a racist. Instead of saying I'm not a racist, you can say what you are. Instead of the not, you could say what you are and enforce that.
You know,
And that's hard to do.
it's really hard. It's really hard. It's really hard. And I think we have to see ourselves. Well, in the tantra, the hatha yoga sort of set up the famous tat swam asi. I am what thou art. Thou art what I am. It's the essence of the Soham mantra. Maybe we should all do this for a second, because our true ability to have this, to overcome hatred, prejudice, is our ability to have an expanded imagination to what it's like to be them. If you're having a trouble, like, hating somebody, it's because you can't imagine what it's like to be them. Yeah. It's really a question of imagination. I remember some great Afro-American guy who was saying, your problem with racism, it's just a problem, lack of imagination. You can't imagine what it's like to be a black person. Your creativity and imagination are limited. So his response was, practice more imagination.
That's a really different use of imagination than I've ever heard. That's such a specific, powerful way. Oh my God.
Well, that's why I try.
Like social activism in the imagination, right? Like, wow,
Absolutely.
whoa. Woo. Yeah. And now I have a question for you. Do you feel like there's a truth that we have like two forces always within us or in the world that we need to like be aware of, like maybe this like positive versus negative or good versus evil, or something that is true that we need to be aware of and I don't know,
I got it.
using our tuning with? Yeah, what do you feel at this point?
And the electrons are described as having wave-particle duality. In other words, they're a wave, and then they're a particle, and then they're a wave, and we are made up of atoms, so we must be kind of like waves and particles. So this is what I think. What was the question again? Should we get the right question?
Are there two forces that work
the
in
two
ourselves or
forces.
in the world?
Yeah. So there's the wave, and there's the particle. There are two forces. The wave is the source, the foundation of creativity, love, and wisdom, to which all material is manifested into particles. Well, I like the expression I and I. Infinite I, individual I. This is what I believe. This is what I've experienced. This is my truth. That when we inhale, we're inhaling back to the infinite source. The one universal mind. The collective unconsciousness. the Akashic record. So that it's the ocean of consciousness, and as we inhale, we're back into the ocean of consciousness. The Akashic record, the infinite possibilities. And then as we exhale, we actually create manifestation particles and beings. And so every breath you take, you're going back and forth through this universal I, and then back to this individual I. And so that we're informed from the infinite, and yet we're expressing an individual. That's pretty, it's good. I think it's helpful. And therefore, when we have troubles in our lives, or troubles, hate, anger, issues, whatever, fear, illness, we could inhale and take those issues, fears, anxieties, what have you, and as we inhale, we actually liberate them, almost as if they were a psychological bubble, and they really are like that. Your fear, your anxiety, your issue, trauma, phobia. And as you inhale, and it bursts, and you let that go. Think about it. Take a moment, and whatever your anger, your sorrows, your incompleteness, and then as you exhale how you would manifest the health and well-being. Like I talked to you last time, and I think that, again, it's sort of like what you said on waste, or exhaling fear. I don't think we should do that. I think that see, when you said the two forces of the universe, the wave is on the inhalation, the particle is on the exhalation. What do you actually want to manifest in this world? Health, relationships, you name it. That's what you want to actually think about as you exhale, because you're bringing it into being. So in the language of the of inhaling, I am that being the source, that being the music, that being the art, the light, the beauty, whatever it is. And then we exhale, that am I. Now that, the mat, that, the dinner, that, my left knee. I am that. I am that. I am that. So when you think about the two forces, we are liberating and manifesting, I think, is the best way to do this. And this liberation is like waves washing over everything, and the manifestation is like particles coming into being.
Wow, yeah. It's like weaving our Denison and how those things go with yoga, And I realized that you were going to do a little solo hum with us.
Oh, yeah. So sometimes I think this talk, and I think there's too much talk. So here's a little practice, and then we take a moment. So this source, I like to visualize this big antenna pointed up to the night sky like we're listening into God. I think you can do that too. I think you got two big dishes, one of them's right here. This sternum is like a huge resonating plate, you know, all. And then with the other huge resonating plate is the back of your head. So you put fingertips to the sternum, and then at the back of the head, at the bottom of the occipital ridge, in the center of the occipital ridge is the inion, and that is the antenna for listening to cosmic consciousness. And you really can power it up with the heart. So we inhale and fill the heart, and we take this energy to the back of the head. And we tap into the ocean of consciousness. We tap into the Akashic record. We tap into the invisible field of infinite possibilities as we tune in with our body-mind into the very source that created us. You riding in up onto the wave, riding on the wave of the divine presence. And then, out your forehead, you think the third eye is for seeing, the third eye is for projecting your prayers, your visualizations, your dreams into being. Your third eye is for creating. So I like to put the back of my hand to the third eye, and the other hand to the other big flat bone. See, I think the bones are very helpful for feeling this. This is sacrum. And then we exhale, and we bring down from the mind of the divine into our body, into our tailbone, into the earth. We manifest. And so, we can do this now with our hands. One hand to the heart, one hand behind the head. Inhale to the source, the infinite. Back of the hand to the forehead, back of the hand to the tailbone. Exhale, manifest particles, health, well-being. Inhale, so. Hands to the back. Exhale, hum. Inhale, I am that. Exhale, that am I. Inhale to the infinite I. Exhale, manifest the individual I. Inhale to the cosmic flame, the source of all. Exhale, manifest that flame as your spark, the divine essence.
So meaning something along those lines?
Yes, it's very difficult to sort of like to separate it all, but it comes from the Tattvamasi, and inhaling that I am. The Soham would be called the Ajapa mantra, the unspoken mantra. It's the mantra without words. It's actually considered like an ask or an H, the hum, no sound, and the so is considered a syllable S. So there's no audible spoken thing to the so hum, and it's really so. Thou art. Thou art what I am. So the so hum also is considered like, it becomes like hum so or hum sa. So you're familiar with typically you see, not typically. I have a little swan, right? A little swan. This is on my old one. And so the swan is the imagery for the animal motif for our spirit. And so in our culture, like the ego story, or like our spirit story. In India, they would be the swan. Or actually it would be maybe like a wild goose, like a Canadian big geese, like bird. So the hum sa. And so people sometimes so to tap into to watch your spirit fly, right? To watch your spirit fly, you inhale like the hum, and exhaling the sa. No, rather inhaling really exhaling the hum, and inhaling the sa. So the so hum is the sa hum, or the hum sa, which is this notion of that our individual soul is really is flying on the wings of the unspoken mantra of you realize what the word universe means. Umi, verse. Verse is the word for song, or verse. Right? The one song, the one verse that all of the universe is singing is the hum sa, or the hum so, or I am what thou art when I am. So that we no longer have a detached sense of self, that somehow I can passively observe you. I no longer can do that. I now only can either send you friendly or unfriendly vibes, like she's friendly, and so the force of the universe always has the wave particle duality to it. That's what the universe is really like. And then, but really the moment before it's broken in, at the really top, there is that unitary oneness. We are one, or the Big Bang. That we have access to it, but our individual expression of it is it's inseparable, and just like it's inseparable from you, and so that we are all separate, yet all relating in the wave particle duality.
And I've loved realizing and even sharing that I see some of the therapy of yoga is the union, or really the therapy of yoga is the union that one might.
I like that, and they don't really talk about that.
And yes, so.
What? What do they say is killing everybody? What? Anxiety, depression, and stress. Right? That's what everybody says. Blood pressure, poor diet, poor this, that, and the other. Yeah. Those are all related to a consciousness. Anxiety, depression, stress, loneliness. So I think that sometimes people think that I know the postures are physical, skeletal. I know that it's good for your low back and your shoulders. I know that. But I also know that when you no longer feel detached and lonely, that when you feel that your prayers are influencing the world, when you feel like you're a part of a we, a team, observing ourselves is observing others. And so yoga has this, the yoga therapy is really going to be a question of consciousness. It's really a question of consciousness. When we feel isolated, alienated, anxious, stressed, depressed, our consciousness really shuts down our immune system. It shuts down our metabolic rate. And so the real healing is going to be a healing of the heart, of the homeland, of the heartland, of the landscape. When we feel that difference, how I can do, people stand up straight, like stand up straight has to do with a powerful muscle. I understand that. Oh, how to stand up straight? No one will stand up straight if they feel threatened in society. No one will stand up straight if they don't have anything to stand up for. No one will stand up straight if they have no standing in their community. So the moment so all the skeletal muscle stuff is nice, but like as long as you're emotionally depressed and you're fearful, you're never going to stand up straight. As long as you're lonely, isolated, and depressed, all the good drugs, all the good physical activity, won't do anything. And that's why. So we must understand that we are sparks of consciousness that are animating this physical form, and that our spark of consciousness is inseparable from the one spark of consciousness, and that every breath we take takes us back to that one source of consciousness that feeds and inspires all of life, and that our exhalation is here to bring that consciousness into being as me, as you. We gotta feel it more. Our happiness will feel it more. Our society is constantly isolating individuals. I'm actually seeing a time in the future where people are not going to be driving cars. I know that's really hard for people to imagine, but we have this sort of weird notion that I can get ahead by myself.
The cars is an analogy to that, right?
It is. And you see people cutting people off, driving past.
Wow.
I can get ahead before you. And I think we're going to start to wake up and realize that I don't like being this lonely. This is not as much fun as if I was in a car full of people. And like, I'm getting ahead and I get there and then well, you're just still by yourself then. What good is that? You brought a whole yoga studio with you. Oh, your team won. Yeah. And of course, our team now really has got to be expanded. Our team can't be just America because it's a global world. That's why I really think we're in a global society. So we have a little Stockholm global universal. This is good.
Yeah. I feel like there's a title for this to be expanding the consciousness and the team.
I like that. In my book I say expand. I use the word expand because I think it's helpful. It's not negating anything that we have or know, right? So you still get to be your skeletal, muscular system. You just have to expand your consciousness to realize that it's your consciousness that's actually moving these muscles. And I think as a particle, Joel Kramer, you see it in the right hand. questioning something because of my mind. Oh, no, you can't tell me this. I mean, my mind is somehow separate. No, it's not. You're not separate from anything, so therefore, how do we live with ourselves? How do we live with ourselves? We don't want to take on all everybody's stuff. But at the same time, we want to take on everybody's joy too. No. Glorious sadness, bittersweet symphony. Philosophy is laugh more and cry often. And that's why really what we're talking about is a wisdom philosophy. We can't tell people to, oh, just laugh, don't cry. That's not.
That's a good example of the imbalance.
Right.
Right.
Oh, yeah. No, I think that that we feel that we feel that, and then because we feel, therefore we laugh more and cry more.
Which is like really living, right?
Perfect.
Full spectrum of emotions. Full spectrum of emotions. Remember that word, full spectrum? That sounds familiar.
I like it.
That was the David John's yoga studio.
Uh-huh.
He had a live studio in OC for a while. And people filming. Wow. Well,
We should
anything
pause.
else you want to say before we like say adios to our viewers? We do have some people here with us.
We do.
And then they always come watch later too, which is great. So yeah.
The biggest message is the universe a friendly or unfriendly place. If it's unfriendly, it's full of waste and trash. Yep. And you should isolate yourself in a very secure. But if the universe is a friendly place, I suggest you realize that we are all in this together. Blessing.
Another amazing timeless drop in. Thank you so much for being here with me, Laura Jane, and John Childers. We'll be back.
Great. Soon.